Anime studios being created from the ground up to make anime solely based off of generative AI. Or there's companies like My Anime List being acquired by Gotti, a company that specializes on blockchain technologies and generative AI to enrich the fan experience in what they call fan nations. I don't really know what any of that really means, but it seems like everywhere I look in the realm of anime and manga, AI is being shoved down our throats wherever it fits. And I'm not saying this because of one niche anime studio that's making generative anime over here, and I'm not saying it because Mal got acquired. I mean, that was mainly a website that's used by otaku and weebs to talk. The mainstream don't really know too much about My Anime List. I'm saying this because the problem is stretching wider and wider every day. I mean, just take a look. Kodakawa and Toei Animation are both actively funding generative AI projects to further supplement their artists. Or, well, that's the excuse that they use in funding these different projects that they've got going on. But it goes to show you that the times are changing, and it shows us that AI is here to stay, whether we like it or not, and that's what makes me worried. Because going back to that My Anime List acquisition, it isn't all it seems on the surface level. Gotti acquiring My Anime List, of course, is gonna mean quite a few different things. They're gonna be using that entire form that they've got as a way to expand their data pool into otaku, weebs, people that like anime in general. It feeds them more information on what people are currently watching, on what they like, on certain traits and habits that a certain user can have. It gives them access to all of that information. But this acquisition is also a part of a much larger partnership with Sony and Bandai Namco, because they have been actively funding Gotti to figure out more ways on how to implement generative AI and the blockchain technology, pouring in billions of yen towards those processes. And from an article published on Sony's website, they really go on to describe what they're gonna be using this AI technology for. It's gonna go towards expanding current IPs that they're gonna be working with, and so on and so forth. And this is all gonna go with what I imagine is using Gotti's tech and knowledge on how to find out different ways on how to monetize things for people to buy, which at the end of the day is everyone's goal. When you look at things like the current IP that Sony has access to, it's massive. I mean, Sony doesn't just own Crunchyroll, they own a ton of other anime studios too, like A1 Pictures. So stuff like this and their investments in furthering AI technologies is potentially gonna be seen in like background scenes, in-betweens, anything like that really. And going in a little bit further into this deal, you'll see that Sony and Bandai aren't the only companies that are partnered up with Gotti, because Gotti's got this service called a fan link, which is also gonna be interconnected with other companies like Shueisha, the company that owns Shonen Jump, as well as other animation companies like Aniplex directly, which leads to a very scary road of maybe seeing AI appear in manga as well. And that's where it gets even more difficult overall. And when it comes to the company at the center of it all, Gotti, they're kind of hard to pin down. Because when you go on the website, it looks a little cryptic, they use a lot of flowery language about enriching lives and opening doors, but at the end of the day, it feels like you're looking at an early NFT site, something that offers a lot of empty promises, but you don't know how exactly it's gonna deliver. But regardless, this is the company that everyone has been pouring their dollars into. And I imagine that in the next few months, there's gonna be some changes to My Anime List on how it functions as a website. I mean, I imagine that they're gonna be implementing some sort of NFT or weird kind of pay for something product. They're gonna find some sort of way to make more money off of My Anime List, because that's a website that was losing so much money before it was acquired. They're probably gonna try and find out a way on how to make it profitable. But moving on from this whole Gotti situation, we've got Kodakawa and Toei Animation both ushering in this new age of generative AI inside of their anime. Kodakawa having an explicit interview with their CEO talking about how he understands the preconceptions about AI and how he knows that it can't make stories in anime just on its own because it's too early for that, but it can be used as a tool for the animators to help out in things like in-betweens, backgrounds, things that don't need a lot of detail but take up a lot of time to do. And Toei Animation pretty much has the same exact argument, and they've got this nice little neat graphic for us to follow if it's just too much for us to just assume what they're gonna be using it on. You see, highlighting the exact same things that we were talking about before, with in-betweens also being thrown into. The reasoning is that this lets artists actually focus on what they wanna make instead of hampering the process on taking in so much time, reducing the amount of labor that they would have to do, which might sound all nice and good when you're looking at it on paper, but the actual implications of what this can mean could be a lot more destructive destructive. Let's take into account how the implementation of AI into anime might actually not be all that ethical overall. Because AI is a system that takes in previous forms of animation, previous works done by a ton of different artists, and then puts them in a machine that is able to bring out different concepts and ideas based off of those previous artworks. The only way that this could ethically work is if every artist has already agreed to put in their artwork into this system for it to then learn based off of their own work. Otherwise, pretty much they're going to be using the entire catalog of anything that's ever existed without any permissions whatsoever. So backgrounds could be legitimately just stolen from one anime and placed into another without any rhyme or reason. Things like that would be happening all the time with certain assets and certain models potentially just being stolen and just ripped out of the artist's hands. The next thing you have to think about is also how they're currently introducing it right now only for the busy work, the things that they deem to be unimportant or not as detail oriented. Because at the end of the day, AI has been advancing so fast and so often that I wouldn't just put it past them that they're going to start implementing it for a lot more things than just these in-betweens and just these small minor details in the background. I would imagine that they would slowly start implementing it more and more until they start using it as a crutch. These studios would want to churn out as much anime as they can, and in doing so, they would rely on this a lot more than they already do. I mean, once they see that they can get away with an inch of putting in AI, they're gonna go for the full mile. And with that also comes with the fact that this can also affect the artists that are working on these series. Because let's talk for a second about the way that an animator is paid for making an anime. Sometimes they're gonna be paid for the creative vision, for what they're doing. That's gonna be the upper level, like the directors and the producers that are actually working on these things. But if you're a freelance artist, a lot of the times you're gonna be paid for the in-betweens, that busy work that is being taken away because of AI. You're being paid for how many frames you're making. You're being paid by the day of how much work you've just done overall. This would pretty much just completely eviscerate that entire segment of that industry, thus potentially taking a lot of people out of the equation. I mean, anime right now is already an industry that is tough to work in. If you're factoring in the abuse that the workplaces have with treating their employees terribly with excruciatingly long work hours and terrible work conditions, I mean, this is just the cherry on top on maybe not getting people as excited to want to actually become animators because they're noticing that their work is disappearing right before their eyes. This being framed as a way to lighten the workload off of the animator is going to slowly become a competition between AI and the animator. And at the end of the day, I would assume that the company is going to go with the one that is the most cost-effective and easy to use. With AI, you can just put in your request of whatever you want. Meanwhile, if you're looking at an animator, they've got their own creative vision and their own opinions and ideas that they want to put into their artwork. There's a difference in what you're getting because AI is still going to be based off of every previous work. It's not currently going to be a brand new, wholly unique idea at this current moment. This is probably the most biased part of this entire video, but I truly believe that you're going to be missing that human aspect. The good part of anime is those feelings, that emotion that you get from watching these stills. People are pouring their hearts and soul into every manga page, panel, every single cell that is on screen. And for the sake of making things easier, the medium overall can and probably will suffer for it. Certain animators on Toei's side have gone on record to say that One Piece and Dragon Ball have not implemented AI so far, so I think that's pretty good news, but as long as they're able to keep that away and the artists have a say in how much is implemented, that would probably be the best for the soonish future of what we're seeing from the implementation of AI. But with this, I would say that that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on this entire mess that's been going on and will continue far further than just this one video. And I gotta throw it back to y'all. What do you guys think about the implementation of AI inside of anime? Are you gonna be extremely supportive and excited about that one generative AI project? Or are you someone that is kind of a little bit disgusted and just disappointed by seeing it introduced in so many different ways? Please, let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to know what y'all think. And as always, I was Randy, and I'll be seeing y'all next time. Peace.